I don't sort of go in with a lot of expectations about any poem, although there are some that I do feel this one has a real chance to work well. One of the ones that I can think of when I first wrote it that I thought might be a winner was Think and Do. I wrote it strictly for laughs, though it was a true story, of course. But I wrote it for laughs, and it's obvious I wrote it for laughs, and it got laughs. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, okay. So it worked, and it worked the way you wanted it to work.
Yes.
Do you want to read that?
I will read that, and if Alice Woodson Watt is watching this, she will, because she loves this poem.
I'm sure a lot of other people will.
Think and Do. It was never a good thing to have a sense of humor and be a Catholic schoolboy too. Such was the day Sister Margaret Maria, or Maggie as we affectionately called her, proved this theory to be fact. Sitting next to James, the funniest kid in perhaps the entire school, helped ease the burden of surviving English class with the oldest, meanest, scariest nun to ever emerge from a Catholic nightmare. Take out your Think and Do books, she commanded in that creepy voice. James opened his book, looked at me with a grin, said, "Thought and done," and closed it again, which hit me with a fierce pierce of suppressed laughter. Mr. Delhi, as Maggie always mispronounced my name, perhaps you would like to tell us what is so funny. Nothing, sister, I softly replied. On your feet, boy, as she moved from behind the desk. Fear suddenly shot through me as James muttered, "Oh shit, here she comes." Before I could brace myself for whatever torture God told her to bestow upon me, she threw her ugly, cratered face directly in front of mine. "What is so funny, Mr. Delhi?" she screamed. You said think and do. James said thought and done. The words just spazzed from my mouth. You find that funny? You find that funny, boy? And she started slapping both sides of my face with both hands over and over as though she was possessed. Curiously, it didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. It probably took all the strength the old bat had, and by the time we had closed our Think and Do books, the sting had gone. I was even chuckling to myself, thought and done.
That's worthy of the laughs you get for it, absolutely. And I hope Alice Woodson was watching and that Sister Maggie wasn't.
Sister Maggie's probably long been dead. She's half dead then.
As you said, humor is easy. You can always tell if the audience is laughing. That's the most salient response that you can get.
Yes.
If you get silence, sometimes that's good if it's a good silence. Like there's different natures to different silences too. Like sometimes you really kind of want to go for that awed silence. I mean that can be wonderful if you actually see it on the faces of the people who are out there.
This is one called Empty Cottage. It's a much older poem, but I remember when I wrote it or read it for the first time before an audience. A couple people remarked about the images, that they really thought the images were strong. Inside the empty cottage inhabits a spirit whose dreams have been swept away by an unforgiving wind. Its sweetness twisted and curled like a rotting orange left on the windowsill baked by the sun. Inside the empty cottage are shoeboxes of pictures and poems confined to corners of the cold attic, treated like trivial trinkets that shiver in shadows of dampness, serving no purpose except to entertain spiders. Inside the empty cottage is a presence sworn to the blasphemy of loneliness, which cries and dribbles, wetting puffs of fuzz and sighing like a broken tea kettle.
Yeah,
So I remember, people remarking, there was remarks about the tea kettle and the spiders and the blasphemy of loneliness that I was told was a really strong line. So
and it all fits into the cottage, the idea that it's been kind of abandoned, and you get this desolate feeling as a result of the combination of images there. And the orange peel on the windowsill is very effective too. So, now, when you were actually reading it, though, do you remember the reaction of the audience at the moment you were reading it? Or?
I don't remember the exact reaction too long ago, but I just remember coming away with thinking, this poem really worked.
You felt like it.
I felt like it worked.
Yeah. Sometimes you can feel that, regardless of the audience's overt reaction. You can kind of see something or sense that they're with you.
Yeah.
Now, Connie was asking about some of your Church Street poems. It made a collection out of them. Did you write them all about the same time, or in the same, at least in the same decade? I know you keep your poems according to decade.
Yeah, I wrote them pretty close together.
You did.
And that had started out really in Christine Grove's workshop that we were in. I had a poem called 1622 Church Street, which I was not happy with. Brought it to the workshop, and Christine said, each line or every couple of lines of this is its own unique poem. You're trying to cram all these things in one poem, it's not working. So I went away, tried her suggestion. Don't remember which one I wrote first, but I brought that to the workshop. She said, much better, keep going with this. I kept going with them, and at one point she said, this is you're going to be your new chapbook. And I thought, yeah, I suppose it is. But they came, once I had the first one, just strictly based on my memories, they came very quickly.
Ah, okay.
I mean, editing not so much, but the guts of the poem, which is how I write anyway. The guts of the poems can't come fast.
Right. But we get a lot of suggestions from a lot of different people, and some of them you just take them for what they're worth and don't do anything about it. But for some reason you decided to actually follow up on this. Was it because it was Christine's suggestion, or was it because you thought that the suggestion itself had merit?
Both. I had a lot of respect for Christine.
Right, that helps.
Still do. Still miss her very much.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, partially out of just admiration for her, and the poems were coming to me.
Right.
Nothing felt forced. Everything felt
exactly.
very inspirational, and just the memories. I thought about things I hadn't thought of in a long time. It triggered something.
Well, you said the first one came, and then it sort of started to build. What was the first one?
Might have been the very first one in the book, and if it wasn't the first one, it was certainly one of the first ones, and it was the right poem that opened the book with.
Mm-hmm. Now, you said you weren't happy with the original poem that you started with.
No.
What made you unhappy with that? How do you feel that you have a poem that's worth having down, and yet you're not happy with it? It has potential, but you're not happy with it. What makes you keep it? What makes you know that you're not happy with it in its present form?
Well, I think just for the fact that it was about my grandmom's house, and it was the first memories I have of my life. So that in itself is cause enough to keep it around.
Right, the autobiographical value of it.
Yes. And, once Christine pointed out to me that each line or two could be its own poem, that did register.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had one about the L stop, because we lived right off the Church Street L stop. It's a very visual thing, and it's trains, and I love trains, and that I thought, well, this is going to be easy enough to make a poem of this. And then I thought about other things like my grandfather and the parakeets we had and my brother playing his records and all these things.
I don't know if we're going to get a chance to go into all this, but but this book is really an excellent collection. It's 1622 Church Street. You won't find it anywhere else. It's Steve Delia's poetry.
Artwork by Lisa Lutwich.
You decided to have Lisa do artwork to go along with the poems. What made you make that decision?
Lisa's a fantastic artist, and I felt very comfortable with her, very comfortable asking her. She showed enthusiasm for doing it, and Lisa's just great to work with.
But the book is very site-specific. Did she actually go and look at some of these places that you're talking about, or did she just get it from the text of the poem?
I went back to Church Street and took some photographs of the house. And at that time, the house was really falling apart. And I said, I told Lisa that, I said, just imagine what you're seeing, only not falling apart.
Right.
And somehow she hit the nail on the head.
Really?
She really did.
You should have had her do a sketch of you as a boy. So that is really a piece of memoir in a way. It's in the form of individual poems, but you put it all together and you have kind of a memoir collection.
Ironically, now because I'm working on memoirs, and at the time I didn't even really think of memoirs, period, let alone that I was writing them. But it is kind of like poetic memoirs.